Welcome to Body Hack and Build a Better You, the podcast where we unlock the secret to living a longer, healthier life and create a bloom zone in our life and within our family. I'm your host, Michaela Morell, and I'm here to provide you with the tools and knowledge to empower you to build a better you, one essential building block at a time. In today's episode, we're exposing the truth about cholesterol, one of the most misunderstood topics in health. We've been told for decades that high cholesterol causes heart disease, but is that really the case? We'll break down why LDL isn't actually a fat, but a protein that transports fat to the brain, the serious side effect of statins, and why dietary cholesterol has little impact on your blood levels. Plus, we'll uncover how cholesterol guidelines keep changing and whether lowering cholesterol is really the answer to better health. If you have ever been told you need to cut cholesterol, this episode is a must listen. I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimer in the show notes, and I want to remind you to always consult your healthcare provider if you plan to make any dietary changes. Hi, body hacking community. It's February still, and a lot of you might have celebrated Valentine's Day, and that make me think more about the heart. February is also American Heart Month. So I want to talk about cholesterol today, statins. If you have been diagnosed with high cholesterol, why you should not worry too much. I will come into the reason why. But also like the fraud around statins, what books you should go out and read, and all the little things in between. I will help you understand what a high cholesterol level is a sign of and why the body keeps on creating more cholesterol. I'm also going to explain everything in between so that you can feel comfortable to know that you're on the right path to start exploring this problem. And for us to understand why cholesterol had become this villain, why it's our enemy, we have to go back into the history to kind of understand this. And it all started like in 1950s, the diet heart hypothesis that the scientist Ankle Keys, he proposed that saturated fats raised cholesterol, which is in turn clogs arteries and causes heart disease. His research was flawed, cherry-picked data to fit his hypothesis, but it set the stage for decades of misinformation. So that's when it started in 1950. And then in the 1970s, the war on fat. So the American Heart Association and government agency pushed the idea that low-fat diets were the key to heart health. Cholesterol became a villain, and people were told to avoid butter, eggs, and red meat while increasing their intake of processed grains and vegetable oils, which is no good. But that's when we started changing, and there was a lot of powerful men involved in this, people that would then sell a lot of more products from their companies, which would generate more wealth for them. And then in the 1970s, the war on fat started. It was the American Heart Association and government agencies that was pushing the idea of low-fat diets were the key to heart health. Cholesterol became the villain, and people were told to avoid butter, eggs, and red meat while increasing their intake of processed grains and vegetables. But the war on fats did not start then, and I'm going to take you a little bit further back into history because one of the very interesting guys that have been pushing a lot of carbs into our diet is John Harvey Kellogg, the founder of Kellogg's cornflakes. And he began promoting a low meat, high carbohydrate diet in the late 90s and early 20th century. His influence peaked in the 1990s and early 1900s when he ran the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan. Kellogg's anti-meat and pro-carb agenda, we need to understand that one a little bit to see why did he start this thing. And Kellogg's was a devout Seventh-day Adventist, a religious group that advocated vegetarianism. He believed that eating meat led to increased aggression, impure thoughts, and even stimulating sexual urges, which he considered harmful. He believed that everything bad came from sex, basically. He was obsessed with purity, digestion, and gut health, believing that a high-fiber plant-based diet would promote moral and physical well-being. And looking back, we can definitely see that when we're eating less meat, our sexual drives goes down. So he was right in that fact. But does it lead to all evil? I wouldn't say so. But that was his idea. He also believed that dancing was from the evil. He would not listen to music. He would not approve of any dancing. Anyway. But in 1894, Kellogg's and his brother Will Keith Kellogg's developed cornflakes as a healthy brand alternative to what he saw as overly stimulating and rich foods like meat and eggs. And in the early 1900s, he strongly promoted a grain-based diet, discouraging animal protein and encouraging food high in fiber to cleanse the body. And then between the 1910 and 1930s, Kellogg's idea spread as the processed food industry grew, and cereal became a staple in the American breakfasts. So his push for high-carb, low-meat diet wasn't just about health. It was also a social experiment tied to his beliefs about morality and behavior. So he truly believed he could just remove people's sexual drive, that the world would be more peaceful. This early push helped shape modern dietary guidelines, which eventually led to the demonization of saturated fats and the rise of grain-heavy diets. You know how the pyramid, like the food pyramid, how that one looks like? It definitely have been influenced by Mr. Kellogg's cornflakes himself and his agenda. Also, who is earning money when people are eating less meat and fats. Then we're eating more carbs. Carbs makes us more hungry. It's very addicting. We keep on eating more and more and bigger volumes. So the people that are up in the grain supply chain, people that are growing sugar, all of those, they are benefiting big from us cutting down on our meat consumption. So that was a little bit of a background, like who started pushing the agenda. And then the American Heart Association kept on pushing that agenda in 1970, probably influenced by other people with big pockets. And then in 1980s, the birth of statins happened. So pharmaceutical companies saw an opportunity to capitalize on cholesterol fears, developing statin drugs to lower the LDL levels. The marketing was strong, and soon lowering cholesterol became a multi-billion-dollar industry. And then in present day, when we're looking at the cholesterol myth unraveling, we can see that newer research is showing that cholesterol is not the problem. It's inflammation, insulin resistance, and metabolic dysfunction that drive heart disease. But the outdated narrative continues, and still when you're going to the doctors, they're looking at your cholesterol levels, and they're blaming the LDL. They're even telling you that the LDL is the bad cholesterol. Looking into LDL, it's not even a fat. It is actually a protein that is very necessary for us to have healing properties in our body and to also help essential fats to get up to our brains. So we're going to have to look into what is actually happening when we're cutting off the LDL. Let's dig a little bit deeper. So LDL is not even the bad guy here. LDL is actually just a transportation system for your brains and your cells. One of the biggest misconceptions is the LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, is harmful. But here's the truth. LDL is not a fat, it's a protein. Its job is to transport cholesterol, fats, and nutrients through your bloodstream to your cells, including your brain. Your brain is 60% fat. It needs cholesterol to function properly. So LDL carries essential fats and fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K to your brain to support cognitive function, memory, and hormone production. Without LDL, your body cannot heal. Cholesterol is needed to repair damaged tissues and support immune function. And having low LDL levels have been linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. A 2021 study found that low cholesterol was associated with higher risk of dementia and cognitive decline. So instead of seeing LDL as the enemy, we should be asking instead the question, what is damaging the blood vessels in the first place? So the real culprits behind heart disease, we're going to look into that a little bit because heart disease is not caused by cholesterol. It is caused by chronic inflammation due to all the processed foods we're eating today. And if you haven't listened to my podcast, you will also understand that the reason why processed foods are driving so much inflammation is because they're very high content of omega-6s. Omega-6 is very pro-inflammatory. When we're having too much of that and too little omega-3, it drives inflammation. So we need to balance that. that is causing inflammation. Inflammation is causing damage. Cholesterol is repairing that damage. Insulin resistance is another thing that is causing damage to our arteries. And insulin resistance happens because of an excessive intake of carbs. So if you eat more cereal to avoid meat, you eat more bread to avoid meat, then you're going to eat way too many carbs, which will then be leading you towards insulin resistance. And that is not good. And other things that are causing problems are nutrient deficiency, because that is impairing the health of the mitochondria. And then also toxic lifestyle. If you're smoking, you're not sleeping properly, and you're lacking movement, that is also going to be harmful for your overall health. So what is happening? When the arteries are becoming inflamed, your body sends LDL to the damaged areas to repair the damage. So it repairs the damage of the injury. But then if the inflammation is chronic, what is happening then? Well, the LDL gets trapped. And when it gets trapped, it can oxidize. And then it can form the plaques inside of our arteries. So what cholesterol is doing, he's just a responder. He's not the cause for your health issues. Your diet is. Your sugar and your vegetable oil intake and your processed foods. That is the real root cause to your health issues. And instead of telling you that you need to change your diet, doctors is trying to prescribe this miracle drug. But it comes with very dangerous side effects. Statins, there are many different names on it, like Liptor, Crestor, and Zocor. And they are prescribed to millions worldwide. But at what cost? Statins, it blocks the cholesterol, but it also blocks essential functions of our body. Statin works by inhibiting enzymes that your liver uses to make the cholesterol, but this enzyme is also very crucial for producing coenzyme Q10, which is an anti-aging hormone. And this anti-aging hormone is actually a very vital antioxidant that protects your heart and mitochondria. So if you're on statins, some common side effects of being on statins are that you can feel muscle and pain weaknesses. Statins deplete coenzyme Q10, and that can lead to muscle damage. I also have multiple clients that comes to me that is having neuropathy, and I can't say it's just because of the statins, but I see it in many clients, and I see a pattern that is not very good. Another symptom is brain fog and memory loss. And the reason for that is if we're prohibiting the LDL to function, we're not going to be able to bring cholesterol up to our brain. And cholesterol is essential for our brain. So if we're not getting the cholesterol up to our brain, the cells are not going to be able to function optimally. They're not going to be able to be built up the right way. We're not going to be able to heal damage that happens in our brain. And when the cells are not built up the right way, what's happening is that we are more insulin resistant. Our hormone receptor that is supposed to be able to have insulin attached to them, they're not going to be able to attach. Hence, we're not going to be able to open up the protein that makes the glucose, the energy, like our sugars, to go into the brain to create energy. And if we're not able to do that, we're not going to be able to have cells that are able to produce the energy that our brain needs. And the cells are going to start dying, which means that parts of your brain starts dying, which means that you're going to see symptoms like brain fog, dementia, and eventually Alzheimer's as well. That is why we can see that these are really side effects of using statins. If you want to do some more research on this, you just do research about diabetes type 3. Diabetes type 3, like you have heard about diabetes type 1, is when we're not producing insulin at all. Diabetes type 2 is when we have insulin in our system, but we're not able to have them attached to the hormone receptors. And diabetes type 3, that's basically insulin resistance up in our brain. So diabetes type 3 is usually always affecting our brain health.
Being on statins is also increasing the risk of diabetes. Why? I already explained it. If our hormone receptors are not working because the cell membrane is not built up the right way, because you're not getting enough of cholesterol, your hormone receptors will be numbed out. And when they're numbed out, insulin resistance happens. And when you're having insulin resistance, then you're close to diabetes. So what happens when we're on statins, it's actually raising our blood sugar levels, and it can worsen insulin resistance. Statins also stresses our organs, especially our liver and our kidneys. So we are having a bigger chance of having liver and kidney damage because the stress on the liver and kidney can lead to a dysfunction, so an organ dysfunction. Another thing is hormonal imbalances. Cholesterol is actually a building block for our hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol. So if we're lowering it, it can actually create hormonal issues. And when we're looking at the studies also with people over 60s that have higher levels of cholesterol, they actually usually tend to live longer than those with low levels of cholesterol. So it makes me mad that the doctors are stressing people and scaring people with, oh, you have high cholesterol levels, you're more prone for heart disease, you might die of a stroke tomorrow, when it's actually reversed. The lower levels of cholesterol we have, the more likely we are to die early. So why are we keep on aggressively pushing statins? Well, because it's a 30 billion a year industry. That's why. It has nothing to do with your health. It has everything to do with money. Something that is very frustrating as well when we're looking at cholesterol and doctors scaring you is that when we're looking at what was considered normal cholesterol levels in the 1980s, it was a total cholesterol level of 6.5 to 7.5 millimole per liter was considered normal. And many doctors didn't consider cholesterol a major factor risk for heart disease unless it was extremely high during that period of time. So in 1990s, they changed the idle of cholesterol down to 5.2 millimole per liter instead of the 7.8, making millions of people suddenly classified as having high cholesterol. And this just happened overnight. So you could be considered healthy one day and suddenly you were in the risk of heart disease. The shift coincided with the rise of statin drugs, first approved in 1987. And then, so it was actually the improvement of the statins that made them lower the limit for when you need it. And then in 2004, the NCEP panel, many of whom have ties to statins manufacturers, further tightened the cholesterol targets recommended. So now, when they're talking about the total cholesterol, it's still at 5.2 millimole, but if you had too much of the LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, if you had 2.6 millimole per liter of that, then you were considered having too high levels of the LDL. And then if we look at the present day, some functional medicine practitioners argue that cholesterol levels have been set artificially low, leading to overprescription of statins. Many now recognize the LDL alone isn't a good predictor of heart disease. What matters more is particle size, inflammation, and metabolic health. So I also want to give you here an idea, because why are the body producing cholesterol? You may not have heard this, but did you know that most of the cholesterol we have in our body, we are not eating it through our diet? The amount of cholesterol we're eating is actually relatively small when we're looking at how much we're getting through our food intake, because the body is actually really good at producing cholesterol itself. So let's talk about cholesterol intake versus production. On average, people consume between 300 and 500 milligrams of cholesterol per day. And it can come from eggs, meats, dairy, and seafood, for example. But when we're looking at our body, our liver and other cells are producing about 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of cholesterol per day, which is 3 to 5 times as much as we're eating. So why is the body producing so much cholesterol if it was bad? Well, it's not bad. And the reason why we are producing so much is because it is crucial for our lives. It is essential for our cell membranes, our hormone production, our ability to convert inactive vitamin D to active vitamin D. So we need it for our vitamin D levels as well, and also for the bile production. So for you to be able to digest fats, we need cholesterol. So most people don't really raise our cholesterol by eating. It's our own body signaling that we need more cholesterol and we're producing more of the cholesterol. So the food recommendations when people are so-called high in cholesterol are ridiculous because what they used to recommend was cut down on your fats, especially your butter. You should do margarine instead. Margarine that is full with vegetable oils, by the way. So they have got everything wrong. And now we know better. But a lot of people are still preaching the old ways of thinking and doing things. And I would encourage you to go out and do some more research. There are 3 books I really recommend. First one is Grain Brain. The second one is Eat the Yolk. And the third one is The Big Fat Surprise. Read those books and you will have more confidence when you are dealing with a doctor trying to prescribe statins to you, that you need to go out and you need to find another doctor that is a little bit more educated on your research and that will support your journey to lower cholesterol naturally if it's really high. And naturally, I'm meaning with diet. Take away processed foods, take away your sugars, take away your fried food, your vegetable oils, all of those things. And that will help your body not having as much damage, because it's when the body have a lot of damage, it's signaling to that we need to produce more cholesterol. So if we're not having so much inflammation and not so much damage, we will not need as much cholesterol to repair the damage. So maybe you are listening to this podcast today because your doctor have been talking about you having too high levels of cholesterol. Maybe you're already on a statin, but here's a list of what you should focus on instead if you are afraid of high cholesterol. The first thing is reduce your inflammation. And in order to reduce your inflammation, you should cut all processed foods. You should only eat whole foods. You should mainly drink water. But then you should also take a blood test to measure how many pro versus anti-inflammatory building blocks do you have in every single cell of your body. This is the most modifiable risk factor for heart disease that you yourself can modify. And there's actually studies showing that if you have a 15-to-1 ratio between the pro versus anti-inflammatory building blocks and you're able to lower it down to 4-to-1, that is associated in the secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease to reduce the risk of dying prematurely with 70%. 70% less chance if we're able to lower your inflammation levels from 15 to 4-to-1, which is remarkable because if we're looking at the history of statins, which is also funny to look at, they're talking about a 33% less relevant risk of dying prematurely if you're using statins. Looking at it, it was actually 100 people they were looking at, 100 people in a control group. One group were using statins, one were not using statins. In the group that was using statins, only 2 people died. In the group that was not using statins, 3 people died, which is really just 1% bigger chance of dying. But instead of that, they were looking at the 2 versus 3. So they're saying it's 33% less chance of dying prematurely. It's really just 1%. And that could also have been just by chance. Like it doesn't have, they can't really prove that it was the lack of statins that caused that death. So anyway, it can have been something else, you know. So, but definitely measure your omega levels in your cell membranes, correct that imbalance. Then it's important to focus on reducing blood sugar. And a lot of people understand that if we're drinking a Coca-Cola with sugar, that will raise our blood sugar. A lot of people will understand that if we're eating carbs, like pasta, that will raise our blood sugar. But a lot of people may not understand that a piece of bread can raise your blood sugar with as much as a Snickers bar is raising your blood sugar. So a lot of people can think that a sandwich is healthier than a Snickers bar, but looking at the blood sugar spikes, really everything that is spiking our blood sugar is unhealthy if we're trying to balance our blood sugar levels. Then it's important to focus on eating healthy fats, and healthy fat means fats from the animal kingdom that is uncured and nitrate free, and preferably from grass-fed organic sources. And of course, eggs that are free-range eggs, and preferably free-range, like your neighbor have free-range chickens, because they will be able to find more worms, insects, and things that they are supposed to eat, which will make our eggs healthier. It can sound gross, but it's true. They're so much healthier than the eggs that comes from chicken that have been eating grains and things they put in the feed that causes more inflammation to make the chicken grow faster and bigger, because then the companies will have a bigger profit. But eat more healthy fats like avocados as well, fish that is well caught, and butter. And extra virgin olive oil, just make sure olive oil is like so hard to get good quality of, because it's like a black market with olive oil. They're labeling it like olive oil, and when we're looking at the molecules, it's usually not all olive oil. And yeah, so a good quality olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Coconut oil is also very beneficial if it's like virgin coconut oil. Anyway, so we should do that, and then also support a liver detox. So milk thistle, dandelion tea, cruciferous veggies, all of those are helping to support the liver. Then exercise. We need to exercise. We need to move. Don't sit still. Get out in the sun, move your body. Take a brisk walk every day. Doesn't have to be long, but 20 minutes, you should be able to do 20 minutes a day. And then, of course, manage stress and sleep. And if you do all of these, I can promise you that you will start seeing that your body is responding positively. You will see the inflammation levels goes down. You will see healthier LDL that is not oxidized, that is not getting stuck. Uh, the doctors will be able to tell on your quality and health of your veins. Of course, it's not happening overnight, but you should focus on this for a year and then give a good evaluation on your body, what have happened. Because remember, most health issues that you're feeling today and struggling with today, they did not happen because you had something bad you ate today or yesterday. I kind of wished it would. Like, if we would see the effect, like truly see what harm, like a meal at McDonald's is causing to your body. Like, if people would go in there, eat, and then walk outside and drop dead, people would go away and understand that, oh, that is really bad for our health. The problem is that our body is so freaking amazing that it can handle stressors for a very long time. And it tries and it tries and it tries to function as optimal as possible. And suddenly it starts showing weaknesses, and we start seeing symptoms, and we start seeing that our body is not able to function properly. And it have taken so long time that people cannot connect. What was it really that I ate that was not good for me? Because like I said, it's a process. For example, if you're malnourished in zinc, it doesn't mean that you have not been eating zinc your whole life. It means that maybe you only ate 90% of your need, but you only ate 90% of your need of zinc every day for the past 10 years. And eventually your body is just struggling so much and it just cannot function anymore. So just be aware that changes, when we're doing changes, doesn't happen overnight, just like disease does not happen overnight. But we can build our body up again if we know what the problem is and what we need to correct. And also, like, for balancing your blood sugar, it can be very beneficial to also implement more prebiotic fibers that helps stabilize your blood sugar levels as well and prevent leaky gut issues. If you want to learn more about leaky gut, I do have podcast episodes about that as well. Also, if you want to level your blood sugar levels, it's important to know that you can do that with changing your whole diet, but you can also add some supplements that can help aid you in balancing your blood sugar levels. And the one that I found is the most effective one is a blend of like 8 different prebiotic fibers, because the good bacteria is metabolizing them, the butyric acid. You do not have to understand all the fancy words, but it's basically just repairing your gut and also leveling your blood sugar levels. So it can be very helpful if you're struggling with your sugar levels go up and down. And even if you're eating healthy, they might spike. So you might want to look into some high quality omegas in combination with some prebiotic fibers to help stabilize your blood sugar levels. Anyways, that was an episode I felt I had to do this month because we're thinking more about our heart this month. And with that comes maybe reflection if we're healthy, and maybe we're a little bit scared, or maybe we're just in love. But I felt the need to explain a little bit more about how Kellogg's cornflakes affected why we stopped eating meat, and how the agenda kept on being pushed, and then how statins came, and then how the agencies have been pushing so that more people need statins, people that would be considered healthy in 1950, but it's no longer considered healthy because they want to sell more drugs, basically. Anyway, I am super happy for you guys to be here. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it with a friend that is using statins today or might have been diagnosed with high blood pressure. Help them get educated. So thank you guys for being here with me today. See you next week. Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to do one thing for me. Think of one person you want to share this podcast with and copy the link and send it right away. Thanks for playing an important role in the Blue Zone community. And if you want to keep on building a better you, one essential building block at a time, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next episode.